Let's talk about the WikiLeaks, Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange. Now, of course, there's so much more here than just the Afghan War Logs, and we could
Oh
probably
yeah.
talk for a couple hours, Kevin, on the State Department cables and everything else. But the Afghan War Logs, the leads from Chelsea Manning. Let's talk about what that means.
Yeah, so I start with Chelsea Manning, but obviously Julian Assange deserves credit as well, and everyone involved in the publication of these documents at WikiLeaks definitely were courageous in publishing these documents. So, U.S. Army whistleblower Chelsea, as I quote in my article, again, I'll just read what she was saying. And this is from her court martial. She had an opportunity after she pled guilty to some offenses to say why she felt we needed to see and view this information. So I felt that we were risking so much for people that seemed unwilling to cooperate with us, leading to frustration and anger on both sides. I began to become depressed with the situation that we found ourselves increasingly mired in year after year. So that's that thing that we've heard from a lot of soldiers, right? That people who we were partnering with, maybe that corruption or maybe the lack of morale or maybe like wondering if they really share our goals and objectives for the country. Hugely difficult. But again, going back to that thing that I think Ron Paul recognized in one of his speeches, which was, on what moral authority do we have to come in there and try and set up a government when we have the record that we have. It's really difficult for us to think that they're going to find us to be people who can come in and organize their society. She added, I believe that if the general public, especially the American public, had access to the information contained within these reports, this could spark a domestic debate on the role of the military and our foreign policy in general. I also believe the detailed analysis of the data over a long period of time by different sectors of society might cause society to reevaluate the need or even the desire to even engage in counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations. So when you get the full picture of the war as you do from looking at these Afghanistan war reports, we could even throw in the Iraq war reports, though we're talking about the Afghanistan war, you get to see how the U.S. military conducts these operations and why they fail, like where they fail. You can even pinpoint days when things are at their worst lows when it comes to the objectives or the efforts on the part of the U.S. military, because it is in that minute detail when you look at this archive of data, and you get to see the civilian deaths that are being hidden from the public that aren't being in the official counts, which we rarely have released to us, but sometimes they are. And so the other thing with the Afghanistan war logs that were published is that you get things like this incredible story, which is that and this was covered by Nick Davies for The Guardian. I think this is a really important thing for people to recall, that you have these kind of operations going on. And by the way, we didn't know that these kinds of operations were unfolding until we really had these Afghanistan war logs published, that you have these assassination squads essentially that set out with Afghanistan special forces to capture or kill a Taliban commander. And then what will happen is, is in this example from October 2007, that they confront Taliban fighters, and then they call in air support to drop 500-pound bombs. And then the carnage that results is, quote, 12 U.S. wounded, 2 teenage girls and a 10-year-old boy wounded, 1 girl killed, 1 woman killed, 4 civilian men killed, 1 donkey killed, a dog killed, several chickens killed, no enemy killed, no enemy wounded, no enemy detained. So a whole lot of innocent people, none of the people were claiming to fight.
Yeah. And this is backed up even till today. I just read a fantastic new article in the New Yorker by Anand Gopal on like what the war has been like in Helmand, Afghanistan for the past 20 years. And he starts off talking about how prior to the Taliban coming in, there were these warlords that were a real problem for the people living in this village. And then once the U.S. came and got rid of the Taliban, they teamed up with the old warlords that were even worse for the people than than the Taliban. And the Afghans were like really shocked by this. They were like, they thought, the Americans would at least, be better than the Taliban. And it turns out they bring back the people who are even worse. But in that story, he specifically talks about how everybody he talks to has 10 to 12 relatives who they know who just died during this war and whose deaths probably weren't counted. People who were shot by Afghan army snipers, who were killed straight by Afghan army helicopters, had U.S. bombs dropped on them, were shot by Americans or Americans with Afghan allies. Just, people who are randomly killed, or then just stories of like just people like terrorized in their homes. So Americans come into your home, they break out all of your windows, they sleep there for a night, and that makes your home a target because the enemy is living there, and just the terror that inflicted on all these people. And if it wasn't for the war logs that we got, maybe a lot of this wouldn't even be known. And who knows if Anand Gopal could get this published and if people would believe it, because if you just have Afghans saying that, yeah, Americans are killing my relatives, people write that off pretty easily in America, as saying like, no, they're probably lying, they're trying to get money or something like that. But here's just this guy, Anand Gopal, not handing out money, just asking people to tell their story. And he says that everyone he's talking to says 10 to 12 people just, died in one of these horrible ways.
Yeah, and I mean, to what you're saying, and Anand Gopal's book, No Good Men Among the Living, it should be on my shelf behind me, and unfortunately, I just couldn't squeeze it in, I suppose. But the way that the last week of our U.S. military being deployed in Afghanistan was marked by, while we're doing this evacuation, was marked by this drone strike that ends up, as far as I can tell, killing only innocent people when we're claiming to be targeting an ISIS-K planner. I mean, that person whose family we killed, I think he was a part of like a nonprofit organization, and they've never produced any evidence even a week to 2 weeks after the strike. I mean, we're recording this on September 7th. I haven't seen any evidence or anything provided to suggest that this person was part of ISIS. And unfortunately, I think that there's just going to be more of the same going forward after, as we maybe continue to wage violence against the Afghanistan people and try to engage in military action on the pretense of protecting the United States from threats. I'm just afraid that more and more innocent people are going to continue to be vaporized in this manner.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some great reporting by Jack Murphy, who's a veteran who talked to a bunch of drone operators recently about how in Helmand, during the Trump years, they were just targeting people who had like radios and things like that because that was a sign that they were potentially with the Taliban. I believe with the strike in Kabul, I read today that the Pentagon was saying that was ordered because they identified a location as they believe it was being tied to ISIS. They saw the car pull in there and they saw some heavy things put in the car. But they had no idea who the driver of the car was or anything like that. And obviously they didn't pay attention to what was happening because they killed a bunch of children in this, and that's just a horrific nightmare.